Hey, it's Fletcher, Vice President of Public Safety Solutions at 911 Inform. We're here back once again with George Kellerman, Executive Director of iCERT, the Industry Council for Emergency Response Technologies, with our October update. Good afternoon, George. How are you today?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great. Great to be with you.
Always good to be with you. So iCERT's mission is to manage public safety on the Hill. What's happening on the Hill? We've got a lot of legislation initiatives happening.
Well, it's definitely one of our missions for sure. And the priority this year and currently is trying to secure NG911 funding, meaning the funding needed to fully deploy NG911 technology nationwide. So we've had some good momentum and good progress this year. There was a bill passed out of the House right before, let's just say in the middle of the summer, which does include funding for NG911 full deployment. And now the battle's in the Senate. And so we've been working with on our own as well as with our colleagues and stakeholder friends and partners across the 911 and emergency response spectrum to lobby senators to include NG911 funding in whatever broader bill that they're going to pass. And the sort of the core of what NG911 funding would be a part of currently is an FCC spectrum reauthorization bill. And so there's work going on in the Senate. Initially, it was thought that September 30th was going to be a deadline because that's the end of the fiscal year. The Congress passed what's known as a continuing resolution, a CR, that basically kicks the can down the road and extends the funding for federal government currently until December the 16th. That's the date they put in the CR. And so that's the new backstop. It's between now and December 16th to continue to work hard, work together as a unified 911 ecosystem, pushing for trying to secure this funding before the end of the year.
So what's the general feel that you're getting back, on where this is going?
It's from the Hill. There's really no one opposed to NG911, right? Nobody's anti-911. The devil's in the details. It's a lot of money, and so I think different members of the Senate want some assurances that the money is going to be well spent. That's really the money that's needed to meet the need, which we and many of our stakeholder partners have gone to great lengths to explain and to justify. And then there's politics, right? It's an election year. We have a big midterm election coming up here in early November. And really, I think what's going to tell the tale is the results of those elections. Whatever the outcome is, that's going to really kind of establish who's got the leverage going into this lame duck session, or this session that's going to take place in Congress right after the election through the end of the year, especially through December 16th. So some of those things we know, and some of those things we don't know, like the election results. And so that's really the general vibe right now. And so we're going to continue to put our head down along with our friends and partners in the stakeholder community to continue to beat that drum and make the case for why NG911 funding is an essential national priority.
Now, that $10 billion that's going to come out of the spectrum auctions, there was some talk that potentially there was an opportunity to maybe borrow from the Treasury ahead of that deadline, or ahead of that money actually being collected by the government. Is that still an initiative that's out there?
Yeah, so a couple things there that you mentioned. First, $10 billion is what was in the House bill as a cap for what would be potentially authorized or allowed as a result of the spectrum auctions that are called for in the bill to pass the House. Now, to be clear, $10 billion is a pretty significant investment in NG911 deployment, but it doesn't fill that gap all the way. The true cost is probably somewhere between 12 and 15 billion. And so, obviously 10 billion would be great, but we're working on trying to get NG911 fully funded and fully deployed nationwide. So that's that. And in terms of the borrowing authority, yeah, you bring up a really good point. It is certainly something that's on our cheat sheet, if you will, and it's something that we continue to talk about as part of something that could be built into whatever the final legislation is. Because the truth of the matter is, if whatever the funding amount allowed is at the end of the day, it's not going to start flowing right away. It's going to be predicated on these auctions, the spectrum being identified and the auctions taking place, and then revenues ultimately being steered towards funding NG911 full deployment. That takes a lot of time. And so what the issue you mentioned about borrowing authority would alleviate that, or at least allow for some startup money, if you will, or some seed money to the program to get started sooner and not have to wait however many years out for that money to start flowing. It's actually very, very similar to what they did at the very beginnings of the FirstNet program. The FirstNet was given borrowing authority so that they could stand up the program and get it up and running. And so this would be the case that we're making for borrowing authority is very, very much along those lines.
Yeah, and like you said, after all, it is public safety, so that's a pretty significant initiative, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So you've got, with iCERT being very active on the Hill, you're planning a winter meeting that's coming up in Washington, D.C., and that's going to happen right on the Hill as well, right?
Yeah, and actually, timing is everything, and I think we sort of hopefully will have threaded the needle on the timing. As you mentioned, the iCERT winter meeting, the winter member meeting, is coming up on December 7th, and in fact, it is on Capitol Hill at the Capitol Hill Club, so right across the street from the House office buildings. And with it being on December the 7th, that could be a real critical time because the new backstop, as we talked about, is December 16th for funding for the government to run out. So they're pushing against, the members of Congress are pushing against that deadline. So us being up there the week of the 7th could provide a really timely opportunity to kind of weigh in and have members of Congress come by and spend a little time with iCERT members at our meeting. And so I want to encourage folks, members of iCERT, to be on the lookout. Registration is about to open. It should be open by the time they view this update. And we look forward to having as many iCERT members join us in Washington on December the 7th.
And in addition to the marketing and lobbying that iCERT is doing, everybody can reach out to their senators and congressmen and let them know that this is an important initiative. People don't think that, one person reaching out will make a difference, but I can tell you absolutely one person can make a big difference. When they hear about initiatives being questioned, that goes on their bucket list for things that need to be addressed. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for people to reach out to their senators and congressmen.
Absolutely. Every voice matters. Every beating of that drum helps. And along those lines, we're working with our stakeholder partners across the 911 spectrum, whether it's NENA, NASDA, APCO, the Public Safety Associations, and the Public Safety NG911 Coalition, to really coordinate as much as possible on that kind of grassroots activity, not only on the Hill, but back home. If you work in public safety, if you work in the 911 space, not only connecting with your member of Congress, particularly your senator at this point in time, but get them in to see your facility and talk about how important NG911 funding would be and what it would do for your community and consequently their community as well. So making it personal, making it local goes a long, long way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, I appreciate you sitting down once again. Always informative, always good to keep the members up to date. Thanks very much.
Hey, thanks, Fletcher. Appreciate you doing this. Thanks to you, and thanks to 911 Inform. And we look forward to catching up on the next one.
Always a pleasure.